going to show you how to make a magic ring. I have a scrap piece of yarn which is going to be my yarn marker, and then I have my main colour which is this pink. And we're going to make a magic ring to start our amigurumi. So we're going to put the tail end into the palm of our hands and hold it there, and then wrap the yarn around just the once and cross over at the top. Some people wrap twice. I found that particularly with acrylic yarn you don't need to do that, so just wrap it once around, put your thumb on top of that, and then if you can hold the working end of your yarn with your little finger, then that's great. And we're going to insert our hook into the front here in the circle that we've kind of made, that loop that we've made. Going to insert our hook in there, grab the yarn from behind, pull it through to the front, and then make a chain. And that keeps, once you've made the chain, you've locked the magic ring in place. And so we've got our 2 strands on the left hand side and 1 strand on the right hand side. If we were going to make trebles into the ring, then we would make our chains more, but we're going to do double crochets for amigurumi. This is in UK terms, and I'm going to insert my hook into the ring and then yarn over, pull it back through the ring, and then yarn over through 2 loops, and that's my first double crochet. And we're going over the 2 strands. Really important to go over both strands as we're working. So we've got 1 double crochet, going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, insert into the loop, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2. If this loop is getting a little loose, you can always tighten it up slightly. So we've got 1, 2, 3 double crochets. We're going to go into the loop, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, into the loop, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, and one more time, into the loop, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2. So we now have 6 double crochets. We'll just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to tighten the hole in the middle, and we do that by holding our thumb on the double crochets we've just made and holding that loop flat as we're doing this and pulling the tail as we go. So we're going to pull the tail a bit, and then we're going to just make sure that everything stays nice and flat, and then we're going to pull the tail a little bit more, and you can see that it's closing up. And then we pull that tail one more time really tightly, and then we have this little, it actually looks a little heart-shaped piece, which is starting round. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my yarn marker in. I found that if I use stitch markers for amigurumi, that I get lost as to which stitch I'm going into, the first or the last one of the previous round. And this way you can keep a note of your rows as you're going. So I'll show you how that works. So we're going to take the tail of our scrap piece of yarn, and we're just going to place it in between the first stitch that we made and the last stitch that we made. So just snug that right down in between those 2 stitches, and then our second round is usually going to be 2 double crochets in each of the stitches around. Now sometimes it can be difficult to decide which bit is our first stitch, so I usually count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so this is the 6th stitch. So this is the one that I'm going to go into. It usually is a little tighter than the rest of the stitches. So we're going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, and then do that one more time. So we're going to insert our hook in the same stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over through the 2 loops. So that gives us 2 stitches into one, and we continue that all the way around. So we're going to put 2 stitches in each of the loops around, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, yarn over through, yarn over through 2, and then 2 in here, 1 and 2, and then got here 1 and 2, and I usually count when I'm doing this, so I usually count how many stitches I've been doing. So we are actually up to 12 stitches now. And then we take the yarn marker, our scrap of yarn, and we just take it from the back and we bring it forward and snug it into the last stitch that we've made. So we got it nice and tight in there. And then we're going to make another round. So our third round is 2 double crochets in the first stitch, 1 and 2 in the same place, and then 1 in the next stitch, so that's number 3. And then we're going to do 2 in the next one, 1, 2, and then 1 in the next one. And we work that all the way around till we get back to here. And that's our last stitch there. And so when we get to our last stitch, we've got this scrap yarn and we're going to bring it backwards and we're going to tuck it right next to the last stitch that we made. And then you can see that we've got our next stitch here. So after these first 3 rows on the hand, we are going to do some straight rows. So I will see you after we've done these straight rows. A straight row is we're just going to do 1 double crochet into every stitch around. 1 double crochet in each stitch around. So this is the end of my 4th row, and you'll notice that it's cupping towards me a bit, and so at this point what I usually do is I will push from behind so that we're working around the outside edge of our crochet. Okay, so that's the inside like that, and then this is the outside. Okay, and so at the end of our 4th row we're going to bring our yarn forward and then carry on with our straight row for another row. Here you can see that we're at the end of round 8, and so at the beginning of round 9 we're going to work a bobble. We can count our rounds by going from our marker and counting to the right of the marker. We're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds. So we're going to make our bobble here. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to go into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over through 2, and then we're going to not complete the treble. We're then going to yarn over into the same stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2 loops. As you can see, each time we make one of these part trebles we get an additional loop onto our hook. It's going to do this until we have 7 loops in total on our hook. So we've got 3 loops, so yarn over and in, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, yarn over and in, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull 2, yarn over and in, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, 2, 4, 6. So we've got 1 more to do, yarn over and in, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2. So now we've got 7 loops on our hook. So we did 6 part trebles in order to make the 7 loops on our hook. So we're going to yarn over and pull through all the loops. Now the bobble will naturally want to go to the back of your work, but we're going to try and push it to the front as we're making this bobble. So yarn over, pull it through all of your loops and try and push it sort of kind of to the front. We're then going to do 1 double crochet in the next stitch, So in this stitch here we're going to do 1 double crochet, and here again you can see the bobble wants to go to the back. We're going to push it to the front, keep everything nice and tight, pull through like that, and you can see that the bobble is sitting nice and proud at the front, and that's not going to go anywhere because it can't go through that way. The next stitch we're going to do is a double crochet 2 together, but we're going to do it as an invisible decrease. So a standard double crochet 2 together, you would go in under both loops, yarn over, pull through, and in under through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over through all 3 loops. And the thing with that is it doesn't look like the double crochet stitch that's next to it. Okay, it looks a bit weird because it's got 3 loops on there. So we're going to do something different. We're going to do an invisible decrease. And what that involves is looking at our front and back loops of our work. So the front loops are the loops that are the side towards you, and the back loops are the side away from you. And for this one we're going in the front loop of the next stitch, bring our hook down, up, through, and then we're going to rotate our hook down and go through the front loop of the next stitch. So we've got 2 loops there on our hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through those 2 front loops, and then we're going to make a yarn over and finish off our double crochet. If you see, that looks a lot straighter now and looks a lot more like a double crochet does. Next thing is make sure that you go in the correct loop when you're going into the next stitch. We're going to do 2 double crochets and then a double crochet 2 together again. So this is one of the front loops and this is the other front loop, so we need to make sure that we go into this stitch over here. So it's actually a lot further away than you think. I'm just going to use a little pin to point. So these are the 2 front loops that we've actually just picked up, and this stitch here is where we're going to go for our next stitch. So we're going to do a stitch into there, a stitch into there, and then we're going to do our front loop invisible decrease. So here we go, double crochet into the next stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, and then we're going to do another invisible decrease. So I'm going to show you that again. We're working into the front loop of the next stitch, rotate, go into the front loop of the second stitch, always going in from underneath and up through, and then yarn over, pull through those 2 loops and yarn over through the last 2 loops on your hook. Then we've got 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, and then another double crochet 2 together. So I'll show you one more time. So we're going in under, this is an invisible decrease, so under the front loop there, rotate your hook down and up through the front loop. You can see the back loops left behind there, and then yarn over, pull through those 2 loops and then pull through the loop on your hook. And that is how we do our decrease. When you do the next round, which is going into the top of the bobble, we do have just the stitches that we're going into. So although it's the top of the bobble, we're just going into this one here, and then we'll go into the next one next to it here. So there's no difference to the stitches there as we're going in. Just carrying on around afterwards. You can see that that bobble is going to stay on the front now. There's no way that that's going to be pushed back in. I'm just about to show you how to change colour. Now you would do this on round 21. You will have 11 stitches, which is what I've got here. So the last stitch of the previous round, what we're going to do is we're going to go in, yarn over, pull through, and then not do the final pull through. Do that with our next colour, and our next colour we can just literally just loop it over. We don't need to tie any knots, we can just make a little loop, pop it on our hook and pull it through those 2 loops there. We'll snug it up a little bit, move the marker to the back, and then you start doing your double crochets in your new colour. You can see that it's all a little bit saggy baggy at the minute, but I can correct that in a moment and I'll show you how. And then we just carry on with our new colour to go around for 1 round. But before we finish that round, what I'm going to do is what I would normally do for an amigurumi, just to make sure it's secure where the colour changes are, is I would take those 2 strands and I'm going to knot them together, literally just an overhand knot. So just going to knot it once, not with the yellow because that's our yarn marker, and then knot it again, yarn over, pull it through, push it through. So we're just doing an overhand knot. That way we can then tuck the ends in out of the way and know that that is completely secure, and we're not going to need to worry too much about that. There, so it's all tidied away. And then I'm going to carry on with our blue, and before we do the frill we're going to do 1 complete round of double crochets in the new colour, in the sleeve colour. And when we get to our last stitch of that first round in the new colour, what we're going to do is we are going to slip stitch into the first stitch instead of double crochet. So we just yarn over and pull through the loop on our hook. Then we're going to make 2 chains, and then we're going to turn and work the other way round. So we're going to be working in the opposite direction to the one we've been working in. And we're going to make a slip stitch in that slip stitch that we just made, if that makes sense. So we made a slip stitch before we turned, and we've done 2 chains, which counts as like our treble, and then we're going to make a slip stitch in there. Then we're going to make a treble and a slip stitch in each of the back loops. Now the back loops here are on the outside of the arm, whereas if we were working in the conventional way, we'd be working on the inside, which would be the back loops. But here, because the back loop is the loop that is furthest away from us, it's the one on the outside of the arm. So we're going to make a treble into that back loop. So we yarn over first, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2, and then we make a slip stitch in the same loop, so the one that's a little larger, which it will be after you've made your treble. Yarn over into the back loop of the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2, and then a slip stitch in that same loop. You can see that it does pull up a little bit as you work into it, but it settles down once we've finished. So then we're going to do that all the way round. So we're going to do 1 treble, 1 slip stitch into every loop around. So we should have 11 little bumps around the outside. Once we've finished, you can see that our inside loops here we can see quite clearly, so they would be the front loops as was. We're now going to slip stitch into the first chain, which is around about here, and then we're going to turn, make 1 chain, and then work our way back, and we're going to work backwards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So our first stitch is this one here. We're going to make a double crochet. So we've turned And we're now working back in the same direction, so from right to left around here, as we were originally when we started this piece. And we're working 1 double crochet into the back loop that is now visible, which was the front loop, but is now the back loop. I think you know what I mean. So we're just going to work into that spare loop that is still there from last time. And we do need to check our count, stitch count, so we know that we should have 11 stitches. So I'm coming back to the beginning here. So 1, 2, I always count backwards from my hook, then I know where I'm going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's one more to be made, and I've just spotted it in there. Can you see it in there? Just in there, that one there. So that now makes 11 stitches, and then we just move our marker back again, and then we can work into that first stitch there. So it is looks like a little bit of a gap, but once you've worked this round, it'll all look absolutely fine. So we're just going to make our next round working around. It's just straight, so it's 1 double crochet into each stitch around, and you can see that as I'm doing this, you can see how this is working. Now I've made this quite low down, so if you wanted to do coloured sleeves that were quite long rather than a t-shirt, then you could always change your colour at this point early on. So you've got your frill around your cuff, around your wrist, so that could be quite a nice thing to do. I hadn't even thought of doing that as an option, but there we go. So you could actually start and do a little long sleeve top with a little cuff on it there, and that's our hand. You can see our yarn marker travelling up there, and that's the frill. So from the bottom, here we go, you can see the frill there, and this is why we do the row before we do the frill in the blue, because it makes it look quite neat underneath. It doesn't look as neat otherwise. And then we just carry on making the arm as the instructions. I will see you in week 2 when we will be doing our legs.